Here we will see working of web server. A web server is a computer system which is capable of delivering web content to end users over the internet via web browser. Web servers are basically simple computer programs that display a web page when they are requested using the web client. The machines on which this program runs are usually called a server. Web server software is accessed through the domain names of websites and ensures the delivery of the site's content to the requested user. The software side consists of several components with at least an HTTP server which is able to understand HTTP and URL. As a hardware, a web server is a computer that stores web server software and other files related to a website, such as HTML documents, images, and JavaScript files. When a web browser like Google Chrome, Firefox needs a files that hosted on a web server, the browser will request the file by HTTP. When the request is received by the web server, the HTTP server will accept the request and find the content and send it back to the browser through HTTP. More specifically, when a browser requests a page from a web server, the process will follow a series of steps. Different steps that are used to display the data in browsers are: first, a user will specify URL in the web browser address bar. The web browser will then obtain the IP address of the domain name either by translating the URL through DNS, that is domain name system, or by searching in its cache. The browser will then request the specific file from the web server by an HTTP request. The web server will respond sending the browser requested page again through HTTP. If the requested page does not exist or if something goes wrong, the web server will respond with an error message. The browser will then able to display the web page. Multiple domains also can be hosted on one web server. To display a website, when you enter an address field in the browser, for example, here I have given the URL as http://www.programsnippets.com/doc/sample.html. The browser will slice this URL in three parts. First is HTTP, which indicates the document you want to access from the web server will understand the HTTP protocol. The HTTP protocol is a standardized language of communication between browsers and web servers. Then www.programsnippets.com. This is the host name of the computer from which the document can be downloaded. And /doc/simple.html is the virtual path of the document www.programsnippets.com web server. When the client sends HTTP request, web and application server follow a client server model. Here, client requests a resource or service from another program, that is server. Web server uses HTTP protocol, that is Hypertext Transfer Protocol, when responding to users' request via the World Wide Web. HTTP is a protocol used to exchange information between computers. Through the HTTP request process, server can deliver the site's HTML document to the user's web browser like Google Chrome. When someone wants to load a website, the browser will look for the web server hosting the site's file. To achieve this, the web browser translates the site's domain name into IP address via the domain name system. If the site is frequently visited, the browser will search through its file cache. After finding the corresponding web server, the browser sends the HTTP request to retrieve site content. The web server receives and processes the HTTP request through its HTTP server. Once the HTTP server accepts the request, it will search through the database to obtain the relevant data. Finally, the server returns the file to the web browser and delivers them to the user. When the HTTP server fails to find or process the requested file, it will send an HTTP error status code to the browser. The most common error message is 404, which means the requested page is missing. A 403 error may appear if there are permission issues. And if a web server fails to receive timely response from the another server acting as a proxy or gateway, a 504 error occurs. User can include some of the processes for security practices. A reverse proxy, which is a proxy server that is accessible to the client, therefore hiding the internal server. It acts as an intermediary, as wherever any user makes request to the web server for any data or file, the proxy server resizes those requests and then communicates with the web server. Access restriction, which is a technique that limits the web host access to infrastructure machines or using secure socket shell, keeping web servers mandated and updated. Network monitoring, which is a security practice that ensures that no authorized activity is going on the web server. Using a firewall SSL safeguard, the web server as firewalls can supervise HTTP request traffic with a secure socket layer, which supports securing the data.